Phụ nữ có thực sự học được và thành công trong ngành STEM hay không? Thầy Tony đây, và hôm nay rất vui được đặt đúng câu hỏi này cho hai chuyên gia. Bailey vừa tốt nghiệp từ trường đại học University of Chicago chuyên môn toán, và Thùy Linh vừa tốt nghiệp từ đại học Harvey Mudd chuyên môn computer science và âm nhạc. Cuộc phỏng vấn hôm nay rất đầy ý nghĩa đối với Tony vì hai bạn Bailey và Thùy Linh đã từng là học sinh từ lúc cấp 2 cùng với Everest Education và bây giờ đang tốt nghiệp. Hello, xin chào. Chào mừng các bạn đã đến với Chuyện Du Học, chuỗi podcast được thành lập bởi chương trình College Campus của Everest Education. Đây là nơi chúng ta chia sẻ những câu chuyện truyền cảm hứng liên quan đến quá trình chuẩn bị hồ sơ du học, cũng như cuộc sống và văn hóa tại Mỹ. Tôi là Tony Ngô, chủ tịch và đồng sáng lập của Everest Education và là người dẫn dắt podcast hôm nay. Trở lại với Season 2, mùa phát sóng thứ 2, Chuyện Du Học sẽ mang đến những góc nhìn mới về trải nghiệm của cựu học sinh của đại học danh tiếng Stanford, UPenn, Amherst. Ngoài ra, chúng tôi cũng đã mời các chuyên gia trong các lĩnh vực, những cố vấn du học giàu kinh nghiệm của College Campus tham gia mùa 2, hứa hẹn mang đến góc nhìn 360 độ về hành trình du học sắp tới của các em học sinh. Các bạn đã sẵn sàng chưa? Let's go! Hello, xin chào. I'm Tony Ngô, co-founder Everest Education and leader of our College Campus program. And today I have two of our favorite students who have gone off to do some really amazing things in the field of STEM and love to just hear about their experiences. I think you guys will love it as well. Thùy Linh and Bailey, can I ask you guys to introduce yourselves real quick? Maybe starting with Thùy Linh.
Yeah, I'm Thùy Linh. And I just graduated from Harvey Mudd College, and I'm headed off to work at Caltech next month.
Fantastic. And Bailey?
Hello, my name is Bailey. I just graduated from the University of Chicago, and I'm heading to Schmidt College to do a post-baccalaureate program in mathematics next year.
Super, super impressive. Both really inspiring, I think, in the terms of your journey that you've taken. And so we'd love to kind of get to know that a bit more today. Maybe first starting with Thùy Linh, tell us about Caltech. How did you get this and what are you going to be doing at Caltech?
Let me introduce the program first. It's called the Schmidt Academy, and it's, I think, in its third year, or I'm coming in third year, where basically they have set aside funds from a donor to encourage incoming software engineers and integrate them into their research groups, and to try and it's a way to kind of create this new, I think, standard within academia to have software engineers helping research groups accelerate and standardize the code and software they use to help their research accelerate and also make it easier to spread and use across the world.
Very cool. Yeah, because I feel like when you think about where software engineers want to go when they graduate, it's almost always to companies, right? Because that's where you can work with hot ideas, but probably more importantly, you can make the most money. In academia, it's always harder, right, to get grants and budget. Is that the main reason the Schmidt Scholarship exists, to help on the financial side?
So how it started was, it was initially only Caltech, I think, students or graduates who were accepted to the program. And then they slowly expanding it to Harvey Mudd. This pool I'm coming in is only 12 students. And so each of us, what I think is really interesting, we're all part of this program together. So we have that connection, and we have like a 6-week boot camp, and I'm not sure how exactly that'll go down.
Super cool. And Bailey, on your side, so yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about your program, field of study, and what excites you about it?
Cool. So my program is not really a master's program or a PhD program. It's one of the many programs that is like a bridge program between an undergraduate and a graduate program that allows you some extra time to catch up on course load or like a research direction before committing yourself to either a master's or a PhD program. Part of the reason why I chose to do this path, I've been recommended that maybe I should just apply to a PhD program immediately, but it's because I switched into my math degree in my third year of college. So my course load was a lot lighter than a lot of people who knew that they wanted to do math a lot earlier on. And I thought that, well, if I'm going to spend 6 years doing a PhD, I might as well spend some actual time thinking about like what I want to do and sort of like what questions I want to ask so I can make the most out of sort of my experience doing a PhD. So which is why I chose this program.
Yeah, and I guess maybe just one follow-up question. So when you were at University of Chicago, you started off with a different interest coming in, right? Or a number of interests coming in. Can you share the story of like what that was and how you have found this, I don't know if you call it a passion, but at least a career interest where you want to devote yourself for the next few years?
Yeah, I think so. I started out as a molecular engineering major. I mainly wanted to work with water and polymer research in order to make devices that can help with environmental remedies or other environmental aspects. I think I was very fortunate because in my second year, I took a linear algebra course with the most wonderful instructor I've ever known in my life. And basically, he really encouraged me to do math. And I think that like I came in thinking that I don't think that I have the capability in pursuing, but after like taking a few other courses and sort of like finding myself to enjoy the coursework and having questions that I want to ask and sort of directions that I want to go motivated by my other engineering coursework, I figured out that this was probably something that would feel more fulfilling to me if I choose to pursue it.
So if I can just kind of analyze that a little bit, right? So I guess it sounds like you had an interest, but were quite undecided in the beginning. And it was a specific course, the linear algebra course, and meeting a specific professor who inspired you, challenged you, gave you confidence that this was the right field for you. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that is a fair summary.
Fantastic. Okay. So question about pitfalls for both of you. You know, it's not common for girls, females to develop careers in STEM, generally speaking, right? And that's why there's even lots of programs that exist out there to encourage these things. Did you ever encounter any pitfalls or pressures, socially, family, from organizations you're in along the way? And yeah, how did you deal with that? Typically, the stereotype, right, is that like it's harder for girls to go into STEM fields, right? But you know, maybe you had positive pressure. Maybe starting with Thùy Linh.
I think my particular experience from the people close to me has always been positive. I think there might be some pressure from like parents as like, oh, you to have some like a well-paying job in like computer science and STEM does kind of more likely guarantee that. But I've been embedded in programs for a while to really focus on like gender equality in STEM. Like I did Girls Who Code, and then picking Harvey Mudd in particular was because it has such a strong focus on gender equality. I think it's around 50-50 for every class year.
That's great.
I think that, I mean, definitely like my family is more probably on the conservative side where like a lot of people are like kind of dicey that you're picking a STEM as a girl. Like, are you sure about that? Like, oh, like people not like smart women and sort of like things like that. So I try to kind of ignore that. Like, I don't think I really care that much about it. I kind of chose to pursue what I pursue because I feel I am kind of okay at it more than other subjects, and I just have a lot of joy doing it, so I just pursued it. And I think that in general, at least U Chicago is just like a good environment because I feel like it's just like a large individual of like very supportive people who just wants to do math together, and like it helps that like a lot of the math people are non-binary and like are on the LGBTQ spectrum, so like they're very inclusive in general. I think actually like most of the pressure has never been from gender or like identity for me.
Amazing. So, but it sounds like, yeah, there's not any pressure from anyone's identity or preferences, but really just the true intrinsic challenge of mathematics itself, right? And can you get through it? The next line of questioning might go back to specific major selection. So at what point did both of you feel that you were confident that you were ready to go into computer science, that you were ready to go into applied mathematics? If you could rewind back to even high school, like what that thought process and some of those key experiences were. Maybe this time starting with Bailey?
I think that part of why I chose math was like the time when I went to Everest was when I really enjoyed learning math, because like it was very challenging for me. And like I just remember like thinking like it's something that like it seems like kind of endless fun, because it's like you get to solve puzzles after puzzles and things like that. I learn math a lot better when it's motivated by problems that other people need to solve it, like seeing a need in statistical method to analyze data in my experiments, or seeing like the need for optimization method and ways to collect and analyze data just sort of like makes math feels a lot motivating, and at the same time like having a deeper theoretical basis to understand those tools is also very engaging, and sort of just having a different major and a different mindset like really motivated me to choose the direction I did.
And then what about for you, Thùy Linh?
I started doing this like coding camps, like I think from a pretty young age, but maybe a little bit in middle school during the summer, and then slowly like girls who code. And I think it also took on not only, I find this like really enjoyable and like pretty natural like way of thinking. It's also like it was a smaller community like starting off, so I think I really gravitated being able to like feel like I could come out of my shell also through it and take on maybe a little bit more leadership. By like I was like I think the only girl in that class, so it was like I became like a representative to show the other like younger girls that you could do it too.
And then if we kind of fast forward to the next phase of your life, right? Post undergraduate life, you guys are now starting into the workforce. Are you seeing a welcoming environment overall? Are there any issues?
I don't know if I have any like very personal ones. I think this is a pitfall of mine of like, or I could improve on this, is I'm not very good at coding interviews, which are integral to new hires especially. My thought process, or like how I think through code, is very much I like processing completely in my brain and like making sure it fits. I like seeing the whole program in my brain first and like the general structure, versus when coding interviews, you have to like talk it through, but I don't really know what I'm saying. If I talk, then I can't process in my brain. So you'd be like invited to a call with someone else from that company, and they'll present you with like a coding question. For example, like sort this array, but in this amount of like space complexity or time complexity or something. And you have to do it in front of them and like talk through your thought process. And if you're lucky, you get through multiple of them. Sometimes I'm not that lucky.
As we wrap up, can I have a couple speed round questions for you guys? All right. So Bailey and Thùy Linh, what is a book that you've read that you would recommend to others?
Project Hail Mary, or just Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I really enjoy his books. I think that just makes me more like rekindle a love for general science.
What is a one-liner about what that book is about? Is it fiction, nonfiction? Like I've actually never heard of it.
Oh, Andy Weir is the one person who wrote The Martian. That was his first book. So it's like how he's very inspired by actual science. The one-liner I think is this astronaut finds himself like with amnesia, and he's the only person alive on his ship. And so he tries to remember what's going on. And basically it's like a very important problem, kind of like Interstellar or something, like you need to solve it or the world dies type of thing.
Interlaying science into fiction, right? Which is why I think what was so amazing about The Martian.
The book that I've been really recently liking a lot is called Neurotype by Steve Silberman. It's a book about the history of autism and neurodiversity in general, and I think that it offers a lot of interesting insight about like different way that people think about things and what makes them tick and motivate them to excel at a particular area. And I thought that I learned a lot about how to sort of think and inspire my own approach to learning and staying curious and like being self-driven. And also being more understanding towards other people in general. I think that is just a huge aspect of the book that I cannot like recommend it enough.
Very cool. Thank you both. I'm adding both these lists into my Audible library right now. Next question is on role models. Who has been a role model for you to feel inspired personally and professionally?
One is actually my professor, but for those who don't know, I don't know if Tony even knows that I got a double major in music as well from Scripps. So with that program, it's much smaller, the music department. So I got very close with my voice professor there. And I took multiple classes with her, not just in voice. Professor Ann Harley. I think what she inspires me is that she's so strong in her convictions and values to really promote female voices within music. And she creates a lot of she owns this record label, or has this record label that produces music commissions music based on religious and spiritual texts written by women. I think it's showed me how much determination one can have to really promote voices, and how difficult also the arts are to get funding compared to the STEM field. I think it's very different, or the amounts of money that you can get from grants.
It's much more meager on the art side, isn't it? Unfortunately. Yeah. Oh, what an amazing experience. And one of the key reasons I feel like you need to take full advantage of the time in university. There are so many amazing individuals that all these universities have gathered together, whether it's your peers in class or professors. A lot of professors. I tell people my biggest regret is actually not forming tighter relationships with at least a couple of my professors. It was in such an amazing place at Stanford, and I totally failed. So at least at Harvard, I did spend time to go to office hours, ended up writing a case with one of my professors there. It's very, very meaningful opportunities where you get to learn from them very directly and have a lifelong bond out of that as well, which is fantastic. Bailey, what about for you? Any particular role models come to your mind?
It would definitely be, a while ago I mentioned taking this linear algebra class. It's definitely this postdoc who taught this class. So I actually never got far enough in sort of taking more advanced electives in my math career to be taking it with a lot of professors. Most of my class have been with grad student and postdoc, but I've never met another teacher as dedicated as the person who taught me. His name was Trevor Hyde. Basically, his class were kind of hellish. It would take me 30 to 40 hours to do P-Set every single week. I would stay up until 3 and I would be like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? But I feel like his classes are the one that I learned the most from. He didn't do it to sort of make people suffer. I think Trevor taught his class with full belief that his students are capable of understanding math on a more interesting and deep level. His linear algebra class had things that were taught in grad algebra classes that my upperclassmen looked at his P-Set and went, why are you studying this so early? But at the same time, it was very interesting and engaging. And I think that the most important thing is that he does actually care about his students. I know that during COVID, he sent out an email to all of his students, sort of checking in regularly with them. You can probably email him about what you've been learning in math, what you've been doing for your personal research, and he'll share with you what he's doing in his math. And he was the person who sort of encouraged me when I at one point I kind of dropped the math major because I failed one of the classes that I kind of overestimated my ability to take, and I just didn't feel like I could finish it. And he sort of just encouraged me to go on. He introduced me to a lot of other people who went very untraditional path in taking math, like, you know, like going to work first or taking a post-bac program. And basically he's like the reason why I ended up in Smith, because I was able to learn about the program and not feel like it's like I'm too like late to start in math or something. And I think that's just valuable and sort of like make me like really understand that like, hey, if I pursue like an academia job in the future, like teaching would be like a very inspiring and important thing that I should also trying to like strive in order to make math more enjoyable or fun for other people as well.
I mean, Trevor sounds amazing. If I can kind of synthesize what you said, I took away three things from your answer about Trevor, right? One is he held you to a high standard, right? And so, you know, he really wanted you to work hard on these problem sets so that you can meet his expectations, which are probably above and beyond whatever the common expectations are for a linear algebra undergrad class. Number two, he showed caring for you and your classmates as individual people, and hence the emails to reach out during COVID and other times of stress. And then three, what a great coach does is also connect you to other resources to push you further beyond that, right? And it's not in his job description that he has to do any of those things, right? Like, so honestly, like that is probably, he sounds like a super inspiring person, someone that I aspire to be when as a father, right? As a dad to my own kids, as an executive of a company, trying to do that with my staff, and certainly with all the students. That's the vibe that we want to have with all of our students that we're coaching through everything. So he sounds like a fantastic guy. I hope you're keeping in touch with him. Last question for you guys. If you were to be able to give advice to yourself back in 9th grade, or to any young students, young girls who are in 9th grade now, who might be interested in careers in STEM as well, like what advice might you give them as something very concrete that they can do as a first step to kind of build that interest?
I think for me is to sort of remind myself to cultivate my curiosity more. I think a lot of time when you're in high school and you're so busy thinking about like the rush to apply into college and what you should put into extracurricular, what I've like found the most like inspiring like peers that I've met at college were like, it's not that their list of extracurricular was super impressive or like, I don't know, like they're leaders because they like really want to lead or something like that. It's just this like pure curiosity driven, like really asking yourself, like, is what I'm doing bringing me joy? Because honestly, that is the only way in which you can like persevere and like go beyond what is needed of you in the classroom. I think because I like that direction that I came into university a little bit unprepared and disoriented about what path that I really go, because I've always been like, hey, get good grades, do extracurricular, you'll get into a good school. But no one tells you what to do once you get there and what you do once you go. It's all up to you. And it would be like a huge advantage to know beforehand what you're passionate about. And that can obviously change. But I think sort of practicing being curious and asking yourself those questions is always a relevant skill, no matter where you are in life, like even after you graduate college. Yeah.
What a great answer, Bailey. Like, we have so many students who feel that pressure that they literally just have to check the box in every activity, right? And so our responsibility at College Compass and at Everest is to help them step back and make sure they're really reflecting. Like, hey, what are the values that are important to you? How do you test out activities and interests that may align to those values? Don't just do it randomly to get a resume, right? But when you hit a challenge, you're going to lose all motivation if you're doing it just to check the box, right? The same is true where if you can't just invent a passion out of thin air, right? Yeah. And I think there in today's society, there's this obsession with having to find your passion. And I think that's like too high a bar, especially for high school students, even for young professionals, right? Like who at even 21 years old knows what they're passionate about, right? I feel like I took another 10 years, not until I was 30, before I really figured out what I could actually say with confidence was my passion, right? And so the best thing is just try, just do different things, and then take the time to reflect right? If it's with yourself, great. If it's with your parent, but you need some sort of coach who can guide you through that reflection process to say, hey, what did I learn from that experience? Does it align to my values? Do I want to go deeper? And then how do I go deeper? So very, very cool. All right, TL.
You think sometimes a high school student, you're always going to be like, oh, I have a lot of things going on. But you also then look back as a college student, you're like, I had so much time. So I think when in high school. So I think just agree, try, but also I think you don't have to find your values, but like, because that's a very difficult thing to do. But I think kind of, it's like, what value are you very passionate about? Because I think then you will also then inject that with maybe your academic interests, and then that will give you a more defined path.
What is the narrative you tell yourself now on, why you're doing what you're doing?
I've been interested in STEM because of its versatility and how it can help people, but that's always been like such a wide margin that I've always been intimidated to actually like answer, what are you passionate about? I have the stability in my life, luckily, from my parents, that I can explore maybe a little bit more of the less trodden direction with environmental technology. I'm not personally, I think, someone who is super environmental with, oh, I need to do all these things, use these certain products or something to save the world. I think it's more like everyone has to do concerted effort, or like we need to integrate that more into our like businesses. And I've always been interested in interdisciplinary practices. So I want to integrate like computer science, technology, and like environmental and business, and try and carve a way that we can really take people's like values and their professions and like use it to change the world in like a small, like in each individual step, versus like you need someone who has this big environmental business and like is solving the world or something.
I think that's a beautiful case study, because there's some people and families that come to us and like want us to help design a very specific career pathway for them from 8th grade all the way through like getting a job, right? And it's 10 years before they already want a very concrete solution in mind of how to solve their kids' fulfillment and passion question, right? And it's much more productive, I think, if you go on the other side of it and say, hey, look, what are the problems that I care about, aligning to the values? Because the solutions and the industry and the world changes, right? So if you said 10 years ago, I want to just learn, I don't know, a very specific coding language and be a programmer doing that, like, yeah, you could go do that, but that's not necessarily like going to be true if that's where the most attractive opportunities are a decade later, let alone over a whole career. But I guarantee you, if you choose a problem like you are, where it's, where's the intersection of technology, applications, and environmental problems, and can we find useful ways to solve these problems? That's a thing that is only increasing in importance, right? And open-ended enough where you can explore lots of different solutions, where you'll maintain your motivation, you'll be able to network to really amazing people along that journey, right? So I think it's such an important distinction to not focus on a specific job as an outcome, but actually to think about the general problems that you're gonna want to focus a decent amount of your life on. I was on a very linear path on finance coming out of school, right? I graduated, I tried to go to the most competitive, elitist investment banking job possible. I worked at Morgan Stanley doing tech IPOs and M&A, and then went for private equity, then went hedge fund route. And that's like the prestigious thing to do if you're on the finance path. However, nights and weekends, I felt that like, I just gravitated towards doing these extracurriculars that were involved in leadership, development, community building, and education, right? So I founded 2 nonprofits in my spare time, right? But it wasn't an active thing where it felt like it took any energy. I was just doing it because I enjoyed these things, right? And it wasn't until after business school where I actually had this realization that it wasn't the finance itself that I was passionate about, right? And because I felt like I was just going down the path, the job right in front of me, it was actually much more narrow than what I found most fulfilling and where I could have the most impact. So how do I marry my skills in finance and business with this interest I have in community building, in leadership development, in education? And that's kind of how like Everest came to be, where it was that intersection there. but it wasn't a proactive, planned out thing from day one. And I wish if I could have advised myself going back to high school or college, like I already showed signs of like, hey, I like analytical things, but I also really love community building and team stuff, right? I don't know if I would have called it leadership and education back then, but at least I enjoyed these aspects. And I could have at least been more thoughtful about making sure I reflected at each step along the way to find more mentors along the way. It's never too late to change. 15 years into my career, I did make the change there, and I'm really enjoying it still. But like, yeah, the earlier you can identify it, I think the better on that type of reflection. Fantastic. Do you guys think there's any other topics that we missed today? This was an amazing part 2. I mean, we've already had one conversation like 5 years ago? So it's really beautiful to catch up once again and see where you're at in this transition. But is there anything that we've missed?
Oh, don't be afraid of failing. I think that's what I was going to say too. Just try your stuff. Again, staying curious helps with that because you focus on what's actually happening instead of worrying about the future. I think no matter where you are in your life, I think you got it. Like, honestly, I was clueless when I was in grade 9. I would say don't worry too much about it. Go with the flow, like I think TL said a couple of times. Just make sure to follow your gut. And yeah, I think you'll end up where you'll be happy.
For me as well as also try and cultivate a support system. It doesn't have to be for you professionally, but just friends or anything, because you don't know what life is going to throw you, especially even like darker things that come along with stresses of life, or very specific things that I'm thinking about. You need different people and different perspectives, I think, and that will help through your journey.
Well, fantastic. Thank you, Thùy Linh. Thank you, Bailey, for taking the time. It's really, really wonderful to catch up with both of you now. Hope we can grab lunch sometime soon, and yeah, maybe check in another 5 years. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Nếu mọi người thấy thông tin và câu chuyện hôm nay của Bailey và Thùy Linh hữu ích, nhờ mọi người subscribe để nhận được các notification của bài mới nhất của chúng tôi. Và nhờ mọi người like, share và comment để thông điệp này có thể lan tỏa được cho nhiều người được biết đến. Xin cảm ơn.